to withdraw forces from the area that were meant to prevent such an invasion from occurring. The U.S. Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, confirmed that a full U.S. withdrawal from northern Syria is underway. President Trump did tweet multiple times about the situation, saying he is dealing with Congress about imposing sanctions on Turkey. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan claims that more than 20 Kurdish villages have been taken over by his forces.
Fox's Trey Yingst. This week, the House continues to move forward with its impeachment inquiry.
3 House committees are determining if impeachment is the proper course for the president, asking a foreign leader to investigate a political rival. Intelligence Committee member Lee Zeldin, a Republican, says he has issues with what happened in Ukraine with Hunter Biden.
Paid at least $50,000 a month from a corrupt company run by a corrupt oligarch solely because he is the vice president's son.
Democratic Committee member Jim Himes says what the president did was wrong, and he understands the call for an impeachment vote.
There's no doubt in my mind that, of course, if Nancy Pelosi does that she will have the votes and that will pass.
Both men on ABC's This Week. The president is pushing a full House vote to gauge support for impeachment.
Fox's Gernal Scott. Police in Fort Worth, Texas say a white police officer was responding to a welfare call when he shot and killed a black woman in her home.
The officer observed a person through a rear window in the residence and fired a shot at that person. The officer did not announce that he was a police officer prior to shooting. What the officer observed and why he did not announce police will be addressed as the investigation continues.
Police Lieutenant Brandon O'Neill, the officer, is now on administrative leave pending an investigation. America's listening to Fox News.
Did you know that home loan rates have plunged again? Would you like to take advantage of these lower rates to help lower your monthly payments? Refinancing doesn't have to be for another 30 years. It can be for 10, 15, or 20 years. It's up to you. Reduce your monthly payments. Pay off your loan earlier. At Bank Pacific, where we're open to closing your loan in a hurry.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Credit conditions apply.
Chili's Grill and Bar is now open at the second floor of the Two Sands Plaza.
Hi, welcome to Chili's.
Come and see what the buzz is all about. Grab your friends and savor their sizzling fajitas, big mouth burgers, and fall off the bone smoked ribs while sipping on their world famous Presidente margaritas. Treat yourself to an elevated experience at Chili's and feel why they're like no place else. Now open on the second floor of Two Sands Plaza. Together, we Chili's.
A tough task facing crews off the southern U.S. coast.
Piece by piece. That's how marine salvage experts say they'll remove an overturned cargo ship close to Georgia's seacoast. Experts saying the 656-foot Golden Ray cannot be safely righted and refloated intact. That ship overturned back on September 8th near the port of Brunswick. 4 crewmen trapped in the ship were eventually rescued. The Coast Guard saying it would take weeks, if not months, quote unquote, to remove the Golden Ray. Paul Stevens, Fox News.
The Royal Canadian Air Force says one of its pilots is safe after he had to eject from his plane just before an aerobatic show in the U.S. The jet crashed near Hampton, Georgia. The Canadian Force's Snowbirds were set to perform at the Atlanta Air Show. No word yet on what caused the crash. Luckily, no one on the ground was hurt. Arizona plans to put English-only education classes on the ballot.
In the year 2000, Arizona bilingual students were forced to attend English immersion classes. The result? According to Arizona State Department of Education, the English-only approach failed to ease student learning burdens and had students lagging behind their peers, leaving the 2017 graduation rates at around 40%. Democratic Superintendent of Public Instruction, Kathy Hoffman, is making the repeal of the English-only education a priority in 2020 voting. And in a bipartisan show of support, Republican Congresswoman Michelle Udall, who chairs the House Education Committee, says, if you simultaneously teach in both languages, students do much better. Mike Piazza, Fox News.
A windsurfer spent a night stranded floating in the waters off Delaware after his sail broke and no one could hear his calls for help. Officials say the man was drifting for hours from Dewey Beach to Bay City, where he reached the shore. He could not reattach the sail to his board after it disconnected. He was wearing a life jacket, though, and the Coast Guard had been searching for him. I'm Richard Jordan, and this is Fox News.
Take Care Wellness presents the 7th Save the Susu Dance Fitness
Christmas fundraiser, October 19th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Teason High School. Tickets are $10 in advance, $15 the day of the event, and $5 for kids ages 6 to 12. Tickets are available at Take Care Wellness, Guam Cancer Care, and through Marissa Collins. Grand prize for the raffle is a round-trip ticket to Asia or Micronesia from United Airlines. All proceeds benefit Guam Cancer Care. This message is made possible by the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro brings you island hospitality with a true taste of modern Chamorro cuisine. A bistro look that feels like home. Their menu features local and traditional flavors with a twist. From their famous Calaguan Hafa to fresh ahi poke salad and their award-winning barbecue ribs. Mescla takes your favorite local dishes and serves them with extra flair that you'll only find at Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Stop by their newest location in the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. For reservations, call 969-2652. Mescla, a true taste of Guam.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of our free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what I said last Friday, and that's why I'm starting out the program today. And guess what, Real Joe Cruz?
What's that, sir?
Tomorrow I'm going to start the program the same way.
That's fine with me, sir.
I know you're a Second Amendment buff, right?
Yes, sir.
Good call, Real Joe Cruz. Okay, so we start out every program here with what Real Joe Cruz and I call Zemi Ikotni. And the mere backwards mention of that bilingual play on words causes the Real Joe Cruz to press a button in the control room here at Tall Tales, causing the theme music from Meet the Press to be transmitted to our international radio listening audience, who then instantly understands that the point of Meet the Press, or Zemi Ikotni, is for me to compare the editorials of the two papers and to give the better of the two, the coveted Blue Star. I have my blue pencil right here. I haven't given the Blue Star since I've been back from my vacation.
Yes, it's been a while.
Not because I'm Moschino with blue ink, but because neither newspaper has merited it so far. Today, the Daily News plays true to form, and instead of running a real editorial, has copied a guest editorial from USA Today, which seems to be the norm. I guess the people at the Daily News figure, well, folks on Guam really don't care about editorial policy that relates to the island, because today the first sentence of the editorial, or what is printed on the editorial page of the Daily News, starts like this: China's business bullying rises to new heights. Do we have China business bullying here on Guam? Yeah, I don't think so. I think probably the only restaurants that serve Chinese food have a strong connection with China, but I wouldn't call that bullying. On the other hand, the Post has run an editorial that is actually relevant to what's going on right here on our beautiful tropical island. The title, with minimum wage hike imminent, Gov Guam must help employers. By the end of this week, Governor Lulian Guerrero is expected to have signed into law the legislation that will increase the minimum wage. She can't do it right now, although she's been tipping her hat since that bill was introduced. I expect the reason that she can't sign it now is that she hasn't lined up all the photo ops. You know, the photographers from all the news media, her own personal photographer, someone from Guampedia, union leaders, on and on and on, to make as big a show out of this as possible. The governor is confident that a tiered, and that doesn't relate to, that's not tongues tiers, it's tiered as in layered. The governor is confident that a tiered increase in the minimum wage will not result in the gloomy economic scenario certain employers have predicted. Quote, I think that with a minimum wage increase, they're giving our people. No, I guess only our people are going, who are at the minimum wage level, will have their wages increase. The people, no, only our people. They're giving our people more buying power, and of course, businesses benefit from that, the governor said. Yeah, so, you know, if you wanted to pull yourself up off the ground, tie a rope underneath your shoes and pull real hard, and you can lift yourself right off the ground. So if you want to have more money circulating in the economy, cause an increase in wages, and somehow this will have the same effect. The governor has until October 18, which is this Friday, to sign the legislation into law. She said she would. The first increase would take place on March 1, 2020, raising the current minimum from $8.25 to $8.75 an hour. The next 50-cent raise would take effect March 1, 2021, raising the wage to $9.25. The first hike will benefit about 3,460 workers. Boosting the minimum wage to $8.75 would slightly improve the take-home pay of about 3,460 workers based on a survey the Guam Department of Labor conducted last year. These workers include servers at restaurants, janitors, hotel housekeeping staff, landscapers, and entry-level retail sales associates whose families will see an extra $40 every 2 weeks if they work a full 80 hours. With minimum wage earners getting a slight boost in pay, elected officials, particularly the senators and the governor, must find a way to help businesses pay for this extra cost in hopes the cost to consumers would somehow be cushioned. Just a few weeks back, one of the governor's financial managers estimated GovGuam would end up with a $27 million surplus by the end of fiscal 2019. It would be great if senators and the governor could agree to roll back the gross receipts tax from 5% to 4% as a way to help even out the impact on employers and also help stir economic activity. GovGuam needs to make its own sacrifice by rolling back the tax increase. I don't know that it necessarily follows that rolling back the tax increase is GovGuam's own tax sacrifice. There are plenty of sacrifices that could be made in the government of Guam. I give you Dominic Munya, a $60,000 employee per year employee at the Department of Public Works, who went to the port and whose salary then increased to $134,000 plus transportation back and forth to work. It's when the government of Guam stops doing this kind of stuff that what the line that is used in the editorial, GovGuam needs to make its own sacrifice. It's when things like that happen that GovGuam will be making the sacrifice. As it is, we have a two-tiered wage system. Those fortunate folks who work for the government of Guam and everybody else. If you drive a bus for the Department of Public Works, compare that with the salary made by the guy who drives a bus, one of the tourist buses that hauls tourists around to various destinations. Quite a difference in salary, quite a difference in perks. The school bus drivers get stuff like the day after Thanksgiving off with pay. The folks down on Tuman who haul the tourists around are lucky if they get Thanksgiving off. you know, because the show must go on. The tourists are here. They're not interested in staying in their hotel rooms because today's Thanksgiving. So that's Demi Cotney for today. I am going to give the Post the coveted Blue Star Award because they actually said something pertinent to our local situation. Congratulations, Guam Post. Okay, then I've got the card coming up next, but I want to, before I do that, I want to acknowledge the poet laureate of Guam, a certain Andrew, right? And I have an artifact that I want to show you for all of those of you out in our international radio Facebook audience, and I'm going to assign the real Joe Cruz the task of describing what he can see for those who are listening to the radio. Here it is. You see what it is, real Joe Cruz?
I do.
Yeah, what would you refer to that as?
A lead pencil?
Uh-huh. Just a standard lead pencil?
Yeah.
Anything unusual about it, real Joe Cruz?
It's short.
Yeah.
It's really short.
It's what we would call a stubby pencil, right?
Yeah, it's a stubby pencil.
Yeah, you have to assume that the owner of this pencil it really used it a lot to get it to be that, right?
A lot of writing.
Yeah, must have scribbled a lot of limericks with this. So here's what Andrew said about this particular artifact, which probably belongs down at the Guam Museum, right? To some I may seem a Luddite, lamenting my poetic plight. I may be a geezer, but I won't use a tweezer to write with a pencil graphite. I bid an adieu to my pencil, an efficient and trusty utensil. So long and farewell. Now with Bob you will dwell. Perhaps he'll use it with a stencil. The words of Andrew. Yeah, so a Luddite, I've explained before what a Luddite is, but it's a good word to have in your vocabulary, so I'll go through it again. There was a guy named Ned Ludd who was a weaver in Scotland at the time that I don't remember who it was, introduced or invented the loom, which was a way that blankets and other things that were woven could be woven much faster than the old by hand threading the thread between several strands. So when the loom came along, a lot of weavers found themselves out of work, mechanization, right? So Ned Ludd went about Scotland with a mallet, smashing looms wherever he could find them as a job protection measure. So henceforth, a Luddite is a person, is used to describe a person who does not like technology because it puts people out of work. That's a Luddite. So Andrew says, to some I may seem a Luddite with his stubby pencil here when everybody else is, right? But you can't criticize Andrew on his product. And here's one that he sent a couple days ago that I should have read when it was a little more timely, when we were talking about the latest genius of electricity, the kind of the Benjamin Franklin of our Benjamin Franklin of our day, or perhaps the Thomas Edison of our day, a person named Clint Rigel, who knows just about everything there is to know about the generation of electricity. And this is what Andrew said. When speaking about electric generation, many people are dour. How will we state our energy fixation and not ruin the world for our power? A new idea has been proposed that would solve the problem with haste. A sewer turbine and a pipe enclosed makes power from our waste. Two birds, one stone, a new thing to think upon. Who knew we could use the, quote, porcelain throne to flush the power on? And, yeah, as I commented, that was something that John Beneventi suggested, using the falling sewer water to turn turbines to generate electricity. I characterized it as John Beneventi's taking advantage of the well-known principle in bureaucracies as to what exactly it is that flows downhill. I think you know what I mean, real Joe Cruz.
I do, sir.
Yeah. Okay, from there we go to the card. And I've got a couple of different items here today. I start out on the front page of today's daily paper, and there is a picture of some young girls wearing something about their waists that looks like it's made from dried up coconut leaves, what we used to refer to as thatch. You can make a roof from thatch. And it's called, and the picture is titled Celebrating Culture. Guma Mahiga members give a cultural performance in celebration of National Arts and Humanities Month at Agania Shopping Center in Hagåtña on Sunday. This is the picture. I just have to wonder what culture it is that they're celebrating. After a lifetime lived on Guam, I couldn't tell you. But of course, I wasn't here in the pre-Hispanic days, like apparently the person who captioned that picture was. Okay, next we're gonna have a little lesson here. So let's all open our Law and Order notebooks. And we're going to talk about examination of witnesses. You've all watched enough Law and Order and scenes from courts, et cetera, to know that one of the things that happens during trials is that witnesses are questioned. And the reason witnesses are questioned is because the process of a trial is to elicit facts, prove up certain facts upon which principles of law are brought to bear. One of the major ways that facts are brought before the court is through the testimony of witnesses. There are a couple of different kinds of witnesses. There are occurrence witnesses, and there are expert witnesses. An occurrence witness is one who says, yes, I was standing on the corner of 12th Street and Vine, and I saw a black car come barreling along and run right over the pedestrian. That would be an occurrence witness. He told you what happened. And an expert witness might be one who said, I examined the skid marks that black car made, the point of impact on the pedestrian, the damage to the front of the car involved, and a few other facts, and it is my expert opinion that car was traveling 46.25 miles per hour at the time of impact. That would be an expert witness. There are a couple of different kinds of questioning of witnesses, or kinds of examinations. There is direct examination, and there is cross-examination. Direct examination is the kind of examination that a lawyer would use in attempting to establish facts in the support of his own case. As example, the plaintiff's case or the government's case in a criminal trial. In direct examination, the lawyer must ask open-ended questions. He can't ask leading questions. As an example, and where were you standing at that time, Mr. Witness? I was on the corner of 12th Street and Vine. And at that time, what could you see, Mr. Witness? I could see 12th Street back about 3 blocks. And while you were standing there observing 12th Street, What did you see?
Objection, misleading.
Misleading. That's my job. That's why we call the program Tall Tales, Real Joe Cruz. So that would be an example of direct examination. The other side can use what's called leading questions. And here's an example of leading questions. Isn't it true, Mr. Witness, that when you were standing on that corner of 12th Street and 9, it was 8:30 p.m.? Yes. And at 8:30 p.m., wasn't it pretty dark? Yes. And because it was pretty dark, wasn't it kind of hard for you to see? Oh, yeah. And because it was kind of hard for you to see, maybe you aren't exactly sure of what happened. Right, Mr. Witness? Yeah. So that's cross-examination. So lawyers ordinarily have to use direct examination when they're examining their own witnesses that they brought to trial themselves, but may use cross-examination for witnesses of the opposing party. Now, every once in a while, when you're watching Law and Order, you'll see Jack McCoy say, Your Honor, request that the witness be declared hostile. Now, that doesn't mean that the witness sits on the witness stand and is swearing and spitting and do kinds of things that project hostility. It means that the witness is attempting to couch his answers, couch their answers in such a manner as to help the other side. And if the judge says, yes, you can treat that witness as hostile, then the lawyer would be able to use leading questions in examining that witness. So if you ever wondered how all these things work now, you know. I have some examples here of direct examination that I think are pretty interesting, so I'm going to read a few of these. For instance, attorney, what was the first thing your husband said to you that morning? Witness, he said, where am I, Kathy? Attorney, and why did that upset you? Witness, my name is Susan. No snare drum back there today, Real Joe Cruz?
I'm sorry, I was so
enthralled.
Yes.
Well, that's one of the occupational hazards of being the producer here at Tall Tales. You can become so enthralled by the statements of the host that you'll forget to add the necessary sound effects. Are we ready now?
I'm looking for it.
You're looking for the snare drum. Okay, now we're going to the next one. Attorney, what gear were you in at the moment of the impact? Witness, Gucci sweats and Reeboks. Attorney, what is your date of birth? Witness, July 18th. Attorney, what year? Witness, every year. Attorney, how old is your son, the one living with you? Witness, 38 or 35, I can't remember which. How long has he lived with you? Witness, 45 years. Attorney, this myasthenia gravis, does it affect your memory at all? Witness, yes. And in what ways does it affect your memory? I forget. Attorney, you forget? Can you give us an example of something you forgot? These are all true stories taken from the notes of court reporters who had a tremendous inability to not burst out laughing in the middle of the trial. Attorney, now doctor, isn't it true that when a person dies in his sleep, he doesn't know about it until the next morning? Witness, did you actually pass the bar exam? Attorney, the youngest son, the 20-year-old, how old is he? He's 20, much like your IQ. Attorney, she had 3 children, right? Witness, yes. How many were boys? Witness, none. Attorney, were there any girls? Witness, Your Honor, I think I need a different attorney. Can I get a new attorney? Attorney, how was your first marriage terminated? Witness, by death. And by whose death was it terminated? Witness, take a guess. Attorney, can you describe the individual? He was about medium height and had a beard. Attorney, was this a male or female? Witness, unless the circus was in town, I'm going with male. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily hold in today's, what do we call it, non-biometric gender classification. Yeah. Attorney, is your appearance here this morning pursuant to a deposition notice which I sent to your attorney? Witness, no, this is how I dress when I go to work. Attorney, doctor, how many of your autopsies have you performed on dead people? All of them. The live ones put up too much of a fight. Attorney, all your responses must be oral, okay? What school did you go to? Oral. Attorney, do you recall the time that you examined the body? Witness, the autopsy started around 8:30 p.m. Attorney, and Mr. Denton was dead at the time? Witness, if not, he was by the time I finished. Attorney, are you qualified to give a urine sample? Witness, are you qualified to ask that question? And last, attorney, doctor, before you performed the autopsy, did you check for a pulse? Witness, no. Did you check for blood pressure? Witness, no. Did you check for breathing? Witness, no. Attorney, so then it's possible that the patient was alive when you began the autopsy? Witness, no. How can you be sure, doctor? Witness, because his brain was sitting on my desk in a jar. Attorney, I see, but could the patient have been alive nevertheless? Witness, yes, it is possible that he could have been alive and practicing law. Anything that allows us to laugh at lawyers can't be all bad, right, Real Joe Cruz? All right, let's take a short break here.
It's a one-of-a-kind wine fundraiser. Wahan Sustainable Culture presents Wine in the Garden. The Hamamoto Gardens help support food sovereignty, security, and sustainability while sipping wines from around the world, surrounded by 50-some acres of beautiful farm and garden. Tickets are $75 each. Proceeds support education and outreach on how important, easy, and fun sustainable practices can be. Wine in the Garden is on Saturday evening, October 26th, starting at 5. For more details, go to our website, gusustainable.org, or call 687-6491.
Hi, welcome to this Subway ad for the all-new Pit Smoked Brisket. How would you like it?
I'll take a man who knows what's what.
Y'all know what? The all-new Pit Smoked Brisket at Subway is smoked slower than a slug going up a down escalator, that's what. I'm talking tender, juicy brisket, naturally pit smoked for at least 13 hours. What's more, it's got layer after layer of smoky flavor. Smoked cheddar and barbecue sauce on delicious Italian bread. Subway, make it what y'all want, what not. Limited time only at participating restaurants.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
Okay, well, let's go next to an item on the card here called the Legislature versus Guam Taxpayers. And this deals with leave for certain government employees. And the key sentence in this article reads like this: the legislature's decision to allow some elected officials to accrue annual leave continues to cost taxpayers. And it's lawmakers over the years have wrestled with the question of whether the island's elected officials should accrue annual leave. And I'll tell you what the answer is right now. No, elected officials should not accrue annual leave. Now, I see that guy over there and the lazy boy, the smart money. Well, all government employees are entitled to annual leave. Maybe so, but elected officials aren't all government employees. And let me go into the article a little bit more, and I think probably there's a good chance that you're going to see it my way, that elected officials should not accrue annual leave, or even sick leave for that matter. Cost savings have been a driving force in the issue, as elected officials who accrue annual leave typically receive large cash payouts at the end of their terms in compensation for unused leave. So here's how it works. At the end of your employment, whatever leave you have on the books, and there are limitations, I think now it's 160 hours, all accrued leave is cashed in, and you'll get a check. That amount will be added to your check. And if you're under the old plan for retirement, that last check goes into what's called your top three, so it can increase your retirement annuity significantly. And if you are an elected official, nobody tells you when you have to be to work, or when you can take some time off, or how long your lunch hour is supposed to be. If you are a senator, you don't have to come to work at all. You could be sworn in and stay home for the whole 2 years and watch Law and Order repeatedly all day long. Not a bad idea. And if you did, you'd still draw your paycheck every 2 weeks. The fact that you didn't do anything would not detract from your ability to draw a paycheck, unless someone got ambitious and filed recall papers. You could get away with that. You could keep getting away with it as long as you could keep being reelected. So it's not like the average government of Guam employee who, if he doesn't come to work on Monday because he wants to they want to enroll their child in school, he would have to take a day's annual leave, because if he doesn't, he wouldn't get paid for Monday, and he runs the risk of being disciplined for being absent without leave. Not so for elected officials who don't have bosses, except the people who keep them in office every 2 or 4 years, depending on the office. Cost savings have been a driving force in this issue, as elected officials who accrue annual leave typically receive large cash payouts at the end of their term. So the idea is, go on about your business, go to the bank during government hours, go to the post office during government, do whatever you want during government hours. You don't have to sign leave, and that way, when you're finished, especially if you're a mayor or a senator, because at the end of your term, that's a termination, and you can cash in all that leave. So save that leave, because you don't really need to take it. Former Republican Senator Mark Forbes in 2005 said annual leave is unnecessary for elected officials because they don't keep set work hours. Forbes wrote a law that year that was the first to end annual leave for senators. That was the first public law out of the 28th Guam legislature, I'm happy to say. Governor Lulian Guerrero was a Democrat senator at the time, wanted to end annual leave for all elected officials, but her proposal wasn't adopted. Although senators ended annual leave for themselves in 2005, they restored it in 2007. They were really sneaky. They slipped it under the radar, and nobody discovered it for about 6 months. They slipped it under the radar in 2007, which resulted in senators of the 29th legislature receiving a total payout of $91,130 for unused leave. Most senators claim to have taken no leave at all during the 2-year term. Didn't take any leave at all, and I'm sure they were telling the truth, because why would they want to when they could save all their leave and cash it in? Most senators claim to have taken no leave at all during their 2-year term and received the maximum payout of $7,020. The legislature in 2013 again eliminated annual leave for senators and extended the ban to the governor and lieutenant governor, who also had been cashing out thousands of dollars at the end of their terms. Lawmakers left the annual leave policy in place for other elected posts to include mayors, vice mayors, the public auditor, and the attorney general. And they should have gone. They should have gone farther there too. And let's talk just a second about the attorney general and the public auditor. The attorney general is always the attorney general, even if he fills out a leave chit and turns it into the director of administration. He is the attorney general, because there is no one who can fill the function of the attorney general except the person elected to that position. So if there's something that requires the signature of the attorney general or his decision, he can't avoid it by saying, they can't avoid it by saying, I'm on leave, or I was on leave. So there's no second in command in the attorney general's office that ratchets up to become the attorney general when the attorney general is on leave. Unlike the governor and the lieutenant governor, we have this odd system that when the governor is in Gilita, the lieutenant governor becomes the acting governor. Not so for the attorney general, not so for the public auditor. B.J. Cruz is always the public auditor, no matter where he is or what he's doing. He's always the public auditor. Mayor's Council Executive Director Angel Sablon said the council doesn't monitor mayors' work schedules. Well, that's true in spades, as mayors generally work round the clock when necessary. Personal leaves, such as vacations, taking care of personal matters, or illness, does require them to submit a leave form, either annual or sick leave, Sablon said. Dedido Mayor Melissa Savares, the president of the Mayor's Council, the only president in the government of Guam, the president of the Mayor's Council, said she does not believe it is necessary for mayors to accrue annual leave. They're on call 24 hours, and it's difficult for mayors to take time off, especially if they are on island, she said. I personally sign annual leave when I take vacations off island, she said. However, when I'm on Guam and need to be away from my regular office time, I make up time when I work on weekends and at the flea market operations or performing other mayoral duties after normal work hours. Leave balance sheets provided by the Mayor's Council in response to a Freedom of Information Act request show many mayors have accumulated significant unused annual leave heading into the last year of this term. And I've explained how that works. Mayors go about their business, do whatever they want, don't use leave, and at the end of their term, they can cash in some of it. Sinahanya Mayor Robert Hoffman has the highest leave balance with 18.6 weeks of unused annual leave. Manila Mayor Alan Ungakta has the next highest balance with 18.5 weeks. Santa Rita Mayor Dale Alvarez has the lowest leave balance with 1.6 weeks of unused annual leave. I guess he didn't get the memo. Documents show some mayors also have large balances of unused sick leave, which by law can be carried over from year to year without limit. Sick leave cannot be cashed out except at death to the employee's beneficiaries or by employees who retire under the government's defined contribution plan. So if you can rack up a year's worth of sick leave and you put in 24 years of actual service, for retirement purposes, you've got 25 years. And again, if you're a mayor, you can go about your business without signing for leave. Such a deal. The decision to apply annual leave to some elected positions has caused problems for newly elected public auditor B.J. Cruz. The public auditor is an independent, nonpartisan official, but the administration earlier this year denied Cruz a month's pay when he left island for medical treatment and was told he didn't have enough leave to cover it. Well, BJ should have just gone. Cruz's salary as public auditor is set by law at $100,000, and there are no minimum requirements for his work schedule. But Cruz said the Department of Administration determined he is an active employee and therefore is subject to government leave regulations and also must make retirement fund contributions from his pay. The law states that the public auditor's compensation shall not be diminished during the auditor's term. But Cruz said he wasn't paid his salary for March after DOA determined he didn't have enough leave to cover his medical trip to California. It's an interesting question. Cruz, who took office as public auditor in September 2018 after winning a special election, said he also had to go on leave without pay last October when he took a short vacation and didn't have enough leave. Cruz, who was legislative speaker before becoming auditor, said he had a low leave balance because he didn't accrue leave as a lawmaker. I believe that I am an elected official and elected to my position at the salary specified in law. I do not believe I should be subject to the annual leave regulations. I agree, BJ. However, when I could not convince a couple of solicitors from the Attorney General's office or the DOA Human Resources Division of my contention, I accepted their determination that cost me 4 weeks of leave without pay. Well, I'm going to make my ruling. I'm ruling in favor. Where's it? Yeah, I'm ruling in favor of BJ. BJ's right. When the salary says it is his when the statute says salary shall not be diminished, it's not up to the ribbon clerks at the Department of Administration to do that because of this leave conundrum. So a thinking senator would do us all a favor by repealing the statutory authority for leave for any elected official. And I would say the same thing for judges. There's no reason for judges to take annual leave or sick leave. Judges pretty much come and go as they please. Okay, so that would be a way of straightening out one of the problems in our government of Guam. And next, I've got an interesting letter to the editor here by the other Governor, Leon Guerrero, who goes by the name, who in order to avoid confusion, goes by the name of Ken. So Ken Leon Guerrero is a rather prolific contributor to the public dialogue on how our government should function. He's done a survey on self-determination, and I think he raises some questions that really bear discussion. Now, he doesn't purport to have submitted the results of a survey that is statistically valid or that meets all of the tests of surveys, etc. But we'll take it on the assumption that it is valid, and anyone who can't handle that assumption is free to call in and make his own assumptions. And here's what Ken says in today's post. There are a number of people wanting to walk down the road to self-determination without knowing what self-determination really is. No amount of ranting about self-determination is going to give the movement champions any kind of mandate when for 40 years they have aggressively refused to take the first step towards self-determination. Now, as he uses the word self-determination, I always feel it necessary to point out that self-determination is not a synonym for colonialization. The way self-determination is used here, it means Chamorro self-determination. In other words, those of the Chamorro stripe coming forth and determining what they think their political destiny should be. Decolonization, on the other hand, means what political status, it refers to the political status of the island called Guam or the territory called Guam. And decolonization would affect everyone who lives on Guam, not just those of the Chamorro persuasion. Okay, so Ken goes on to say, No amount of ranting about self-determination is going to give the movement champions any kind of mandate when for 40 years they have aggressively refused to take the first step towards self-determination, which is to ask the people what political status they want. So I did. And I'm going to come back to Governor Leon Guerrero here right after this short break.
Hulu is all your TV in one place, plus more. Watch thousands of hit shows, movies, and award-winning Hulu originals for only $5.99 per month. It's TV without the cable contract and the freedom of on-demand streaming. Get current network shows from ABC, CBS, NBC, and Fox, and binge watch every season of your favorite cable shows. Premium Hulu viewing is brought to you by Proline Automotive and AB Sports, Guam's store for Nike. To advertise on Hulu, call Choice Digital at 989-0042.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Okay, so Ken says that he did his own survey. The results are what I expected and probably what all self-determination leaders knew in their hearts but didn't want to hear because it would have lost the justification for high-paying government jobs and federal grants. Below are survey results of 743 adult residents, minus 3.58% plus or minus margin of error, asked 2 questions about political status. Are you in favor of the government of Guam spending taxpayer dollars to fund efforts to change Guam's political status from our current unincorporated territory of the United States to some other kind of political status? Answers: yes, 33%. No, 67%. So let me just stop here for a second. Ken, I see you on the line here, but let me flesh out some of these points, and then I'll get to you. If I don't get to you before the break, I'll definitely get to you after the big halftime show and give you a fair amount of time to expound on your theories here. Okay, so the first question is, are you in favor of the government of Guam spending taxpayer dollars to fund efforts to change Guam political status from our current unincorporated territory to some other kind of political status? 67% of the people said no. I have voted on that on the air many, many times, stating it this way. I would be interested, and of course it always arises as in the Davis versus Gov Guam context, where the vote is limited to Chamorros, or ancestral inhabitants, which is a euphemism for Chamorros. And my answer is always the same. I'd be interested to find out how Chamorros felt about the various kinds of political status that they may or may not prefer. I don't think I want to pay for it, though. And once again, I think what I'm looking for in a government is an efficient, effective government that provides the basic government services in accordance with the rule of law on at least a break-even basis. All of the things that are coming out of the so-called Commission on Self-Determination, that's not basic government services. If there are those who want independence, if they want to separate from the United States, if they're the Guam Exit Gang, that should be their initiative. I don't think I should have to pay anything for it. And apparently, Ken's survey agrees with me. And then it goes on to say, what is your preferred political status? Answer: no change, 54%. Statehood, 24%. Independence, 22%. Based on survey results, the majority of residents are satisfied with the current political status. A supermajority of residents are satisfied with or want closer ties to the United States, and a minority of people want independence. And that makes sense when you consider that Guam is not ready for self-determination and won't be for a very long time, if ever. I know there are a number of people who don't want to hear that because it minimizes the justification for government funding for their jobs. But if they really want to change the political status of Guam, they're going to have to do more than rant about the need to change political status and do things to prepare for changing political status. And I agree with that. And the rest of Ken's letter here are things that I'm going to let Ken explain himself. But I just want to take a moment here and point out a few things. What we have, what is I refer to as the euphemistically named Commission on Decolonization, because it's not a commission on decolonization, and the government of Guam, the leadership of the government of Guam has never, ever attempted the decolonization of Guam. There has never been a letter to the Speaker of the House of Representatives or to the President pro tempore of the Senate saying, please introduce legislation that would decolonize Guam in the following manner. It's never happened. What we have is that Chamorro is the Decolonization Commission, which is the Commission on Chamorro self-determination, as though the status of Chamorros could be determined in the absence of changing the status of the island of Guam or the territory of Guam. That would be decolonization. So when you come right down to it, the so-called Commission on Decolonization is not a commission on decolonization. It's a commission for Chamorro independence. Guamocracy, government of Chamorros, by Chamorros, for Chamorros. That's what it is. And rather than coming out and saying that this is what they're after, the folks who are the prime movers of the independence movement want to keep this self-determination ball bouncing so they can have this commission, and so they don't have to come out and say, yeah, and here's how we would run an independent Guam. We'd have a parliamentary government or a tribal government or whatever else we have. By saying what we're really interested in here is self-determination, choosing amongst these three statuses, two of which are blind alleys, choosing amongst these three statuses so that the Chamorro independence propaganda and livelihood can continue to be supported by the taxpayers of this island. So we're all paying for this pro-independence rant, whether we like it or not. The statehood function of the commission just isn't there. As you were, free association is a political will of the wisp. It means nothing. There can be no negotiated agreement between the territory of Guam and the United States because the territory of Guam under Article 4, Section 3 is property of the United States. So in order for there to be free association, Guam would first of all have to become independent and then attempt to enter into a treaty with the United States. No different from independence. Okay, so we're going to have our big halftime break, the halftime show. And Ken, please call back at the end of the break, and we'll put you on and let you pick up with the government of Guam, the Governor Leon Guerrero versus the Guamexitists. Thank you.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Getting out of harm's way. I'm Richard Jordan, Fox News. Defense Secretary Mark Esper says President Trump ordered all U.S. troops in northern Syria, to move south, but not to leave the country.
Look, we didn't sign up to fight Turkey, a long-standing NATO ally, on behalf of the SDF. Again, this is a terrible situation. That's why in the little over 2 months that I've been on the job, this has probably been the #1 issue that I've dealt with week after week with our Turkish counterparts.
Esper on Fox News Sunday. Meanwhile, Turkey's military offensive against Kurdish troops in northern Syria shows no signs of slowing down. The New York Times reports the Kurds cut a deal with the Syrian army to send troops to the area as part of a counterattack. House Democrats have been criticized about not formally holding a vote to begin the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. But Vermont Senator and 2020 hopeful Bernie Sanders says he's concerned about what the Senate Republicans might do.
Will Mitch McConnell do the right thing? Will he have a full trial where the American people, the senators, I'll be one of them, can hear the evidence regarding what Trump did? I am nervous that McConnell will put party in front of country.
Sanders on ABC's This Week. Ecuador's president and leaders of the country's indigenous peoples struck a deal to end nearly 2 weeks of protests. 7 people died during the demonstrations. Both sides agreed Ecuador will back out of an IMF package that included a sharp rise in fuel prices. Police in Fort Worth, Texas say a white police officer was responding to a welfare check when he saw someone near a window and fired a single shot after perceiving a threat. A 28-year-old black woman was shot and killed.
We have communicated with the family and shared our serious and heartfelt concern for this unspeakable loss.
Fort Worth Police Lieutenant Brandon O'Neill, the victim's family attorney, says she didn't have time to perceive a threat. America's listening to Fox News.
We understand what matters to you because at Docomo Pacific, we're a family too. With the Now Family program, mom, dad, and kids stay connected on the latest devices the whole family can enjoy. For just $155 a month, get 3 lines with 30 gigs of 4G LTE data each, and endless use of your favorite apps without affecting your monthly data bucket. Add more, get more, save more. Docomo Pacific, better together. Some conditions apply.
Water. It covers nearly 3/4 of our Earth. From vast oceans to millions of rivers and streams, we're all concerned with protecting our world's water. But none is more important than the water you and your family drink and use throughout your home. A Connecticut water treatment system can improve your water so that your family is using the best water in the world. Connecticut, for refreshing ideas on water.
American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
A man in California is indicted by a federal grand jury in Miami for an international telemarketing scheme that targeted older Spanish-speaking residents.
The indictment says Angel Adrianzan partnered with call centers in Peru who would call mostly older U.S. residents. The callers would pretend to be attorneys or government officials and accuse the victims of failing to pay for products they'd ordered or received. They would threaten the victims with deportation, prison, or negative marks on their credit if they didn't pay. Adrianzan would take the money from the victims. He's been charged with fraud and extortion. The Justice Department says since President Trump signed a bipartisan bill called the Elder Abuse Prevention and Prosecution Act, they've participated in several enforcement actions, including one in March that resulted in elder fraud charges against 260 people. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
A 10-year-old in New Jersey died after falling off a ride at a fall festival. State police say the girl was ejected from an amusement ride at the Deerfield Township Harvest Festival. The ride is called Extreme. A scare during a Star Wars event at a library.
The Los Angeles Public Library was holding an event called Star Wars Reads Day when a man dressed as a stormtrooper, a fictional space fighter from the science fiction franchise, arrived with a toy gun. Some attendees thought the weapon was real and called police. An LAPD spokesman says a helicopter airship was called in to patrol the area from overhead, and cell phone video showed several LAPD squad cars parked outside the library. Officers got the stormtrooper to drop his weapon. He was apprehended without incident. The only struggle, the bulkiness of his costume. Ann Carrick, Fox News.
Health officials in Hawaii say online dating is behind an increase in sexually transmitted diseases. The state reporting the highest number in 3 decades, saying that online matches led to more connections with many more people. I'm Richard Jordan, and this is Fox News.
Take Care Wellness presents the 7th Save the Susu Dance Fitness Fundraiser, October 19 from 6 to 8 p.m. at Teason High School. Tickets are $10 in advance, $15 the day of the event, and $5 for kids ages 6 to 12. Tickets are available at Take Care Wellness, Guam Cancer Care, and through Marissa Collins. Grand prize for the raffle is a round-trip ticket to Asia or Micronesia from United Airlines. All proceeds benefit Guam Cancer Care. This message is made possible by the stations of Choice Broadcasting.
Rain. It's nature's way of cleansing the earth. Yet by the time that rainwater makes its way to your home, it may not be exactly the same as nature created it. A Connecticut water treatment system can improve the quality of the water you and your family drink and use throughout your home, so you can be sure your water is clear, clean, and fresh, just as nature intended it to be. Connecticut, for refreshing ideas on water.
American Water Tech, a passion for improving lives through better water.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
A suitable entree for the remarks of Ken Leon Guerrero. Ken.
Oh, thank you. That was very impressive.
Yeah, well, that's the real Joe Cruz. He's always trying to enhance the reach of the program, so he did a nice job there for you. So what can you tell me about Governor Leon Guerrero versus the Guam Exodists? A new word.
Well, it goes back to, for 9 years, they've been spending around $500,000 a year on this office in a Herculean effort to spend $300,000 of federal funds before the grant expired, and they made it just by the skin of their teeth in September, because the grant expired September 30, and I think it was like the week before it expired, they had a big rah-rah session over at Desitani and were able to expend the money. But the one thing that they should have done that they haven't done was to do the survey. And I maintain the reason they've refused to do the survey up to this point is because they know that the results that they would get are similar to the results I got. And if they'd gotten those results 9 years ago, they wouldn't have been able to justify spending $4.5 million to try to spend $300,000 in federal funds. They wouldn't have had those fancy jobs or been able to go to the UN every 3 months to beg for mercy.
Ken, it's ironic that those who are in favor of independence are on the payroll of the colonizer, what they refer to as the colonizer.
Yeah. And it's also ironic that as we're speaking, they're in New York right now at a climate change conference. And I refer you to Regine Bisco-Lee's presentation, which was one of the more unbelievable presentations I've ever seen. In 3.5 minutes before probably an empty chamber, and I'm just guessing because when you look at all the seats behind her, they're all empty. She spends like 2 minutes and 50 seconds talking about how horrible life is here on Guam and how we don't have a government here, which was a big shock to me. And I understand that they've got some word play game that they can use to justify why she says we don't have a government here. But I think she's actually right. We don't have a government here. What we have here is a clique, a group of people who got together, proclaimed themselves to be our government, and are helping themselves to taxpayer dollars. That's my view right now. Because the whole reason for going to the United Nations allegedly was for climate change, and unless we decolonize, we won't be able to hold back the rising seas, and we will soon disappear from the face of the earth. That's my summary of her 3 minutes and 47 seconds. But the bigger question here is, why wouldn't they do the very simple thing of doing the survey like I did? It wasn't hard. You know, they could have done that 9 years ago and saved us a lot of money. But until we as a people stand up and say, hey, there are more important things that we could be spending money on rather than trips to New York every 3 months, or in the case of the lieutenant governor, every month. And that money could be better used for things like, oh, I don't know, medicines for the emergency room at GMH. That would be a good one. But it's very clear, you know, 54% no change, 24% like statehood, 22% like independence. You know, so we know that statehood is an extremely long shot at best. The only way that I think Guam becomes a state is we discover that we have gold in Mount Lam Lam, one of the most, and that's how California got to be a state. You know, they discovered gold. Oh, you're a state. You know, so we don't have anything that makes us attractive enough as a state to convince the club, the Senate, to share power with 150,000 people. I mean, 2 seats for 150,000 people? Are you out of your mind? You know? Whereas, I mean, Puerto Rico, they've got, at one time they had 4.5 million people before their economy collapsed in the hurricanes, and they couldn't get statehood. So statehood's an extremely long shot, and then the independence group, they're as big a long shot as statehood, maybe even longer, because the few people I've talked with have this weird idea that we'll be so much better as an independent nation, and we charge the military $10 billion a year lease rent for land they already own. And when I point out that Cuba's been trying for 50 years to raise the rent at Guantanamo from $4,132 a year, or get rid of the Americans, and they haven't had much luck, what makes you guys think that Guam will have more luck than Cuba is having getting rid of these bases or changing the rent? And they haven't got an answer for that either. So I think what we should do is, if there is a true desire or movement, let that true desire or movement arise out of the community and get the government out of it. And we'll save probably close to $750,000 a year that could be repurposed for something more important to the community as a whole.
You know, Ken, I've said from time to time that if we're going to do anything as far as political status is concerned, I would like to see somebody hold a vote with one question on the ballot. Should Guam separate from the United States and become an independent sovereign nation? Yes or no? And if we did that, I wouldn't care who got to vote, because I think I know what the answer would be. And that's the decolonization effort in New Caledonia that everyone seems to agree to. But again, I don't think the independentistas would countenance a vote like that because they'd lose. So the idea is to play control ball, you know, to keep the ball bouncing without letting the time run out, so you can continue to propagandize on the public nickel, hoping to build more support for independence as you go along.
Well, I'm going to try to change that game. This was the start, because now I'm going to go back to the legislature and the government. And I've already got one lawsuit against the government for wasting taxpayers' money. I'm pretty sure I could get another one going just as easy on this issue right here, because there's nowhere in the Organic Act that provides the government with the authority and responsibility to fund changing political status. And the purpose of the government is to do things for the common good of the people that ordinary citizens cannot do themselves, like build highways, run hospitals, maintain an army, have a police force. Things like that are beyond the scope of what all of us can do, except for maybe Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates. So that's why we have a government. It takes our tax dollars and uses them for the benefit of all citizens. And this little $500,000 a year plus travel exercise does not benefit all the citizens. It actually discriminates against about 60% of the population.
It benefits the folks on the payroll and the ones taking the trips, though, doesn't it, Ken?
Yeah, that's my whole point. That's why they wouldn't do the survey, because if they did the survey, got these results like I got, they'd be very hard-pressed to write the travel request, and the justification being to present the people's case before the United Nations. Yeah. I mean, I was just gobsmacked last night when I listened to Eugene Bisco-Lee's presentation, where she is standing there representing the people of Guam. She has no mandate to do that. The people of Guam did not send her to the United Nations to plead for decolonization. No, we elected her to the 35th Guam legislature to act on legislation for the benefit of the residents of Guam. So these little trips are a vanity exercise. She gets her picture, they get a group shot at the UN with the seal in the background. They stay in a fancy 5-star hotel. They eat in Michelin-rated restaurants, maybe taking a show or two while they're there. You know, because after all, if they're only speaking for 5 minutes apiece, this was a very, very expensive trip for 5 minutes apiece, when they could have done the same thing as a video and sent the video file to be run there at the UN, saving taxpayers many thousands of dollars. I think our contingent was 10 people, if I remember the press release.
Well, the lieutenant governor was there, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, he's there every month. This is the second month or third month in a row that he's been there. That's why I gave him the UN frequent flyer card in my op-ed cartoon for him.
Yeah.
So Guam politicians need to focus on Guam. And I mean, we have so many problems here on Guam that they really need to focus on. That this is just an exercise in vanity more so than an exercise in futility, because that's all it is. I spoke before the United Nations. I burnished my resume.
How about, and I'm for the people, for our people.
So in my letter, you know, I talked about the fact that this is supposed to be a democracy of the people, by the people, for the people. But the way they're running it, it's more like a government of the insiders, by the insiders, and for the insiders. And this is a perfect example of it.
Good points, Ken. All good points.
Well, I'm sure that now that I have done a survey, I bet you dollars, dimes, and donuts that there will be funding found to do another survey, but with bias a bit. But I didn't think I was biased in my questions, you know. And at the same time, great maybe then we'll finally reach this separatist, decolonization, independence exercise and focus on something more important, like how do we keep the prisoners in Department of Education? How do we get medicines to Guam Memorial Hospital? How are we going to fix the potholes that we tax the hell out of our citizens for, but have yet to get around to fixing? Now, these are the problems that the senators and the governor should be working on.
How about how can we have a legislature without spending $8 million a year on it?
I'm working on that. Part-time legislature, 21 part-time senators, no primary. Hell, right there, we saved $2 million on the no primary. You know? So there are things, but it comes down to this. We as citizens get the kind of government we work for. And that's why in the end of my letter, you know, I talk about when I see something that upsets me as a citizen, I'm not quiet about it. I'm rather vocal about it. I make sure that the people who are responsible for the policy or whatever hear about it, and I engage with them. When we have more people doing that and get our own constitution so that we can assume more governing power locally, then will be starting to mature as a political entity. But right now we're a political infant. You know, we've had the power to do a constitution since forever. We've had almost 50 years. We've had the ability to delink from the U.S. IRS and create our own local tax code. But the same people who say we want to be an independent nation are the same people that say we don't want a tax code because we don't have the people or the ability to create or manage a tax code. You know, so that's where I have problems with with the decolonization movement. On one hand, they won't do anything to prove that we are ready for self-determination. And the very fact they refuse to do those things is the very reason why we shouldn't even entertain or spend money on this exercise. Because what's the point of having a self-determination exercise if one of the requirements of being an independent, what are we going to need? A constitution? Well, guess what we don't have? We don't even have one.
But of course, Ken, you know the reason that the independentistas don't want to, they say you can't do a constitution until we are independent, because any constitution that we did now would have to be in accord with the U.S. Constitution, and therefore we couldn't have the democracy that the independentistas obviously favor.
Yeah, I know, but it's an avoidance argument. It's like a lot of people that I talk to in the independence movement or have tried to talk to me, they aren't registered to vote. And so I laugh because the Vietnam War didn't end when women burned their bras and men burned their draft cards and went to Woodstock. It ended when the hippies registered to vote and voted out those in favor of continuing the war. You know, so if they want to have a revolution, they have to have the revolution first within the existing rules, and then they can change the rules after they get into a position where they are in power. And I just did an analysis of the 2018 voting. The 45 older group is 41% of our population. The 44 to 18 is about 61% of our voting population, plus or minus in here. But in the 2016 election and in the 2018 election, the 44 and under group were between 36 and 38% of the active voters. So even though they are a larger group, very few of them vote. Then you get to the 45 plus crowd. You know, we had a 68% turnout. So even though we're a smaller political group by numbers, we vote. So for those who, and I've been trying for 4 years to get the younger people to register and to vote. And when you look at the fact that we had 55,000 people registered to vote in 2018, and only 37,000 of them voted, they're not going to change the world. They're leaving it up to us to change the world, so they can have all their music fest at Adeloop they want.
Sounds good to me, Ken.
All the slogans.
It sounds good to me. Let's leave it the way it is.
Yeah, well, that's why in 9 years, the only thing they've done so far is they had a conference at the Dusitani with a camera that was fixed focused on a banner, so you couldn't see any of the speakers, you couldn't hear any of the speakers, but by God, you could see that banner that was up behind the head table.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ken. I know that I don't need to encourage you too much, but keep after it. The essence of a free society is people's ability and willingness to speak out on important issues. And you're certainly doing that, so thank you very much.
And I'm trying to get more people to do it as well, because that's when the government will become more responsive to the people. Because, I mean, you pulled the cork out with your action against Michael Borja. You know, I had a very similar success with PUC and Joey Duenas. And I've had 3 cases in court now against government of Guam. One still surviving. One was thrown out on a weird technicality, and if I wanted to, I could challenge it. But I'm moving on to bigger things. And this is the duty of citizens, is to question those that speak and spend our name.
Well, that's what the real Joe Cruz is always saying. What is it that you're always harping on, real Joe Cruz? He's got to dig in his briefcase here to find it.
Probably a Thomas Jefferson quote.
You'd think he'd carry it in his shirt pocket or something like that. He's still digging. Here, he's got it, yeah.
There it is.
Go ahead, real Joe Cruz.
While a constitution may set forth rights and liberties, only the citizens can maintain and guarantee those freedoms. Active and informed citizenship, it's not just a right, it's a duty.
So, Ken, you are complying with your duty. You are active and you are informed. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, and I encourage other people to do it. It's actually not that hard to do. It really isn't.
Well, thanks for calling in today, Ken.
Okay, talk to you later.
So long. So I've got Jimmy on the line, but I want to go to some Facebook comments before I get to Jimmy here. I prefaced this portion of the show when I mentioned that Ken had done a survey and that I wasn't vouching for the reliability of the survey or implying that any significant scientific methodology was used, but that we would take it as at face value. And of course, I get a comment here that says, flawed survey. Guess who made that comment?
Jesse?
Yeah. Jesse, yeah, flawed survey.
What do I win?
Yeah. And of course, it's flawed because the answers don't come out right. Independent should have gotten 90% of the vote. So it's obviously a flawed survey. Jesse also wants to turn the tables on me and ask me pointed questions, saying, Senator Bob, do you consider yourself a libertarian? No, I don't consider myself a libertarian. I consider myself a classical liberal. I say that with a certain amount of caution because the left has made such a mess of the word liberal that even they have abandoned it. They want to be called progressives, but a classical liberal in kind of the sense of Thomas Jefferson. I believe in sound money. I believe in a republic and a representative democracy. I believe in a constitution that advances the morals of a particular nature. I'd add some libertarian tendencies, but that's what they are, tendencies, not the core of my political philosophy. So, Jimmy, I'm going to come back to you after the break here. Seventh inning stretch.
Water. It covers nearly 3/4 of our Earth. From vast oceans to millions of rivers and streams, we're all concerned with protecting our world's water. But none is more important than the water you and your family drink and use throughout your home. A Connecticut water treatment system can improve your water so that your family is using the best water in the world. Connecticut, for refreshing ideas on water.
American Water Tech. A passion for improving lives through better water.
Is it possible that one day soon you'll be polishing up your resume and going off in search of a new opportunity? Would you like to know a few trick questions you might encounter when you're interviewed? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll give you a few of those questions and maybe even tell you how to answer them.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mescla. Try their featured special for October. Taiwan-style beef noodle soup. Beef shank and tendons slowly simmered in a rich Taiwanese-style soy-based broth. Served over noodles with bok choy and cilantro. Available in Hagadia and in Tumon at the Grand Plaza Hotel. For reservations, please call 969-2652.
So here we are, center field bleachers, Wrigley Field, Chicago, and Jimmy is out there watching the game, probably munching on a bag of popcorn. Right, Jimmy?
No.
You missed the game, huh, Jimmy?
So I can't hear you very well.
You can hear better now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you weren't at Wrigley Field. You weren't out there in the center field bleachers for the seventh inning stretch, Jimmy?
No, I was waiting for Yogi Berra.
You're going to have to wait a long time for... Well, actually, the real Joe Cruz did a pretty good routine on Yogi Berra once upon a time, right, real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what can you tell me today, Jimmy, that I don't know, realizing that that's an awfully broad subject?
Well, got 4 points. I got 5 fingers, but I got 4 points to talk about.
All right.
The first one, God bless your soul for those lawyer jokes. Those were good.
Well, thank you, Jimmy.
Where'd you get them?
A friend of mine sent them to me. Yeah. I'm always on the lookout for lawyer jokes.
Hey, you want to hear magistrate's report joking our beloved Guam?
What kind of joke, Jimmy?
One of our beloved magistrates jokes from our beloved Guamanians.
Is it broadcast quality, Jimmy?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
This guy, this beloved fellow Guamanian, was going some smoking dope, and then one of our other beloved fellow Guamanians came and stole it. And so the first beloved Guamanian called the police. said, hey, he stole my smoking dope. And when the police came out there, they said, oh, that's all he's got left. And they arrested him for trace elements. Anyway, you see, second quote. Our beloved Guan, or Guaminians, have a problem with ice smoking and thieving. So what can you do about that? What can anyone do about that? Ice and thieving.
Ice what, Jimmy?
Ice. You know what ice is?
I have a pretty good idea, yeah.
It's an illegal drug. And because they smoke ice, they steal. Our beloved fellow Guaminians, or pronounce it however you will, there's a problem here. Yes, no?
I don't know what you're talking about, Jimmy. I kind of lost you somewhere along the way.
Okay, this is point 3.
All right.
Our beloved fellow Guaminians, to quote ex-Governor Calvo, unquote, our beloved fellow Guaminians seem to have some problem with illegal drugs. I.e. ice, methamphetamine. The reason I'm speaking like this, I read a book last night, Blitzed. You know World War II, the Blitz? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Blitzed.
Okay.
Germans in the Second World War. And methamphetamine was invented by Nazi scientists. And I never smoked it, but I have suffered from the effects of it, the thieving. The thieving and the corruption from our beloved fellow Guaminians. Yes, I have suffered from the effects of ice, but I never touched it, never even seen it. Hello?
Yeah. Is there anything else, Jimmy?
Yes, a lot. Anyway, it's not a bad book. But you know, I like Ken Leandro. Don't know him, never seen him, but he was kind of tired. He didn't show himself well. And he wants to be the next governor. Oh, fourth point. Do you think the campaigning for the next election has started already?
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah, it has, Jimmy. So thanks for calling in today. I'm going to let you go. I know you're paying for your time on the phone, so I'm going to save you some money, okay?
Anyway, thanks. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
God help us all.
Okay, Jimmy.
God help us all.
God help us all. Thanks for calling, Jimmy. So there's Jimmy's words of wisdom for today. God help us all. I'm going to go back here and pick up on some of the Facebook comments here that related to Ken Leon Guerrero's call. I already disposed of Jesse Limtiako's question of whether I consider myself a libertarian. And if the case were yes, so what? Jesse Limtiako says Guam needs a Chamorro Political Status Committee or some nonprofit group. Exactly. That is exactly the point. It shouldn't be our government engaged in this money-wasting activity that is not providing an essential government service. There are those people that want to speak out on a particular political status, whether it's independence or statehood or whatever. Fine, go for it. But don't ask me to pay for it. Jesse also comes along and says the Marianas Political Status Commission will be asking the legislature to amend the law that created the group, Public Law 19-63, in order to get the public's pulse if there's still the desire to continue the CNMI's political union with the United States, as stated in the mutually negotiated covenant, which was approved by Congress in 1976. And my only response to that is, so? And then? So unless Jesse's point is, well, I shouldn't be criticizing our our so-called self-commission on decolonization, because that's not what it does. And besides that, Saipan in the Northern Marianas, they've got something just like it. So what? And Jesse says, I made the statement that it's ironic that those who are the independentistas are on the government payroll. You know, it's kind of like, Benjamin Franklin and Samuel Adams and all of these, Paul Revere, all these revolutionaries, were on the payroll of the King of England at the time, and they petitioned Parliament to send enough money over to the colonies to do some education on political status, right? That's an irony. Jesse comes back and says, where is it? It's ironic that the USA has unincorporated territories or colonies. I don't think it's ironic at all. Especially as far as I can tell, it's what most of the people want. People in the Virgin Islands are not beating the drum for independence. People in American Samoa don't even want to be United States citizens. People of Guam, as far as I can tell, are pretty satisfied with the status that we have right now. Puerto Rico, if anything, would like to move closer to the United States and become a state. So, no, it's not ironic that Guam, the United States, still has an unincorporated territory. But, of course, I'm violating one of the rules of discourse here. And one of the rules of discourse is that the first person who uses the word colonization or colonizer can pick up the chips because he won the argument. Any mention of colonialization or colonizer, that's where the bad lies. Anything dealing with a colony is bad. And here's another little irony for you. The colony of Hong Kong, which became a British crown colony in 1840 and was a British colony up until 1997, when mercifully it was reunited with its mother country of China. What are the folks in Hong Kong saying right now? We don't like this. They look back at the time when they were colonized by a European nation as the golden era of Hong Kong. I don't see any great Chinese nationalists out beating the bushes in the streets on Nathan Road saying, we want to unite with China. Forget about this autonomous territory. That's an irony for you. Those of you who want to use the word colony and colonizer as a pejorative. Let's see. Pierre Taurine says, why it was not run by the PDN and its posse of pro-independence extremists. Is that why the folks in Saipan and Northern Marianas want to get out from under their relationship? And then Jesse comes back and says, Pierre Taurine, sir, I get that you would love to see Guam stay an unincorporated U.S. colony forever. And I hope so, because I've made that same statement right here. I would like to see the United States stay where we are. We're part of the American empire. We should use our efforts to improve our position within the empire, not take off and become an independent Marxist state, which is what I see the movement is towards. Yeah, so I'm with you, Pierre M. Taurine. And then Jesse Limtiaco comes back. Now, here's something really powerful, man. Jesse played a trump card here. Ken, you don't represent me or our family. We never elected you to anything. Wow. Yeah, I just don't know what to say about that. And then Nate horns in by saying, I'll have some of what Jimmy's on, please. Okay, and then we've got Daryl Taggarty, a very familiar name here on Tall Tales. Someone so skilled, so talented, so articulate that he is able to serve as the host of Tall Tales. That's quite a credential. And here's what Daryl says. In effect, Ken is generating content for public discussion. Free speech and freedom of the press practiced through contemporary forums, Facebook and talk radio. That he fills an interesting space proves that our elected officials, local journalistic media, and academia are not satisfying our need for actionable information and a path towards solving the issue. Right on, Daryl. Okay, let's see. I got a couple callers on the line here. I've got R. Carl, and I've got Francis, and I got to take a break here, heading for Churchill Downs. Coming back from Churchill Downs, I'm going to take Francis first, and R. Carl, I'll let you wrap up the program today.
It's a one-of-a-kind wine fundraiser. Wahan Sustainable Culture presents Wine in the Garden. The Hamamoto Gardens help support food sovereignty, security, and sustainability while sipping wines from around the world, surrounded by 50-some acres of beautiful farm and garden. Tickets are $75 each. Proceeds support education and outreach on how important, easy, and fun sustainable practices can be. Wine in the Garden is on Saturday evening, October 26th, starting at 5. For more details, go to our website, gusustainable.org, or call 687-6491.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Call to the post, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, and the first rider out of the gate is Francis. Way to go, Francis.
Hey, how you doing, Bob? Welcome back home.
Thank you. It's always good to get home, Francis.
Yeah, I heard Ken earlier, and what I wanted to know was Senator Biscoe Lee was at the United Nations building testifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess they're still over there, are they?
I think so, yeah.
I have a question for her when she comes back home, because I wanted to ask her, who gave you permission to represent me at the United Nations? And a few other things, that I wanted to ask her.
Good question.
All right. That's all, and I'll probably see if I can call in earlier tomorrow and talk to you more.
Very good. Thanks a lot for calling, Francis. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you for taking my call.
Okay, so R. Carl.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob.
I guess you opened up the Carl line, huh? Real joke. You never opened the Tom line today, though.
I did, sir.
You did?
I opened all lines.
Congratulations. Okay.
I guess I beat in Carl Gutierrez. He's
Yeah.
one of the other Carls. He's
He is the Carl.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to chime in on this issue, which is kind of at the heart of the political status issue, that the Chamorros have never had a chance to express their will, but I believe they have. You know, my mom is Chamorro. She was here during the war, and as were her many siblings. And during the 40s, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, you know your history much better than I do, but in the 40s, especially after the war, we aggressively began the pursuit of upgrading our position from just being a coaling station and a prize of war out in the middle of the Pacific to we raised money to send representatives to Washington to pursue citizenship and the creation of a governing set of documents, the Organic Act.
Actually, before the war, Carl, F.B. Leon Guerrero and Balthazar J. Bordallo did a collected pennies from school kids to fund a trip to D.C. in the late 30s, asking for citizenship for the island of Guam. So all of the neo-nationalists who are now saying we never had the chance to express ourselves are kind of dissing these two people that are very popular as far as Guam political pioneers are concerned. But go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, and to me, they made a very rational decision, you know, especially after the war. They'd experienced what it was like to be invaded by a incredibly oppressive country, and they were put through, you know, tremendous hardship and just brutal treatment. And so after the war, they made a very rational choice to draw closer to the most prosperous and the most powerful nation on the face of the earth. There's nothing weird about that. That just makes complete sense for an island that is not very big, doesn't have you know, a lot of natural resources as far as minerals and all these other things to exploit. They made a completely rational choice. And the thing that, to me, demonstrates the will of the people is that in the process leading up to the approval of the Organic Act and citizenship, and in the decades after that, there was no organized mass demonstration or letter-writing campaigns contacting our Washington representatives or our local representatives stating that we're dissatisfied with this situation and we must end this relationship with the United States. The vast majority of Chamorros were very satisfied with our situation, and you know, the UN has completely lost all credibility because they've chosen to pick on through this special committee the United Kingdom with 10 territories, France with 2, New Zealand with 1, Morocco has 1. These are all Western democracies, except I don't know where I'd classify Morocco. So for some reason, they've completely ignored the incredible oppression of Tibet and Hong Kong and Eastern Turkestan by the communist Chinese. Hong Kong, I mean, there's millions upon millions of people out in the streets protesting that they do not want to lose their freedom, and it's dead silence in the United Nations. Tibet has the estimates run as high as 1.2 million people that were slaughtered after their invasion in the 1950s. Over 6,000 Buddhist temples destroyed, the Tibetan language outlawed. You know, thousands of texts, Buddhist texts were destroyed and statues. And the Eastern Turkestan, the Uyghur Muslims, the estimates are between 1 and 3 million Uyghur Muslims are in so-called vocational training camps, which are really concentration camps in which they're forced to eat pork and drink liquor against their religion. So they've lost every single shred, every atom of credibility as far as I and many other people, thousands of other people are concerned. Millions of people, you know, they become a joke. Anyway, I just wanted to briefly rant about the United Nations and how they've fallen short.
Well, you remember, Carl, that the Cold War governed most of the United Nations undertaking up until 1991. So the whole decolonization thing was pretty much part of the Cold War maneuvering amongst the first and second worlds, the communist-aligned countries and the non-communist-aligned countries. And, of course, the Russians always maintained that every one of their satellites was a free and independent country, and that the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics wasn't a Russian-dominated system where 14 other socialist republics were really governed from Moscow. And the United States, for reasons that I think made sense at the time, kind of went along with the myth. But the whole decolonization thing has turned out to be a disaster. Those places that were, quote, decolonized in the big rush in 1960s, I'm looking for the one that was really successful. It certainly wasn't Rhodesia, which became Zimbabwe, which is, you know, right in there with Venezuela, or any of the, any of the other mostly British and French colonies that were, quote, decolonized as part of that rush. What usually happens is after the decolonization, a Marxist government comes forward and takes control of the country, and the Marxist government then is overcome by what is referred to in geopolitics as a strongman, a Robert Mugabe or something like that. And given the way the independence movement here on Guam has handled itself as far as suffrage, et cetera, is concerned, I'm not sanguine enough in the approach to think that it would be different here. Maybe it would, but it's not a chance I'm very willing to or very anxious to take.
Yeah, from what I've read, you know, that in the years leading up to decolonization in Africa, which is, in many of the countries, it's been a disaster. As you pointed out, many people went back to Western universities, I guess some in America, some in Europe, and they were influenced by Marxist professors, and they brought these Marxist and socialist ideas back to their countries, and they became the leaders because they were the educated class, and they brought these Marxist principles of government into reality in many of the African countries, and they're still in operation there to this day. And which is why the countries have just, you know, millions of people are living in just misery in Africa. It's just been terrible.
Agreed. And it's not a ride for which I'm lining up to buy a ticket. I can tell you that. We have here on Guam what people all over the world are striving for. We have the rule of law. Sometimes we get a little angry with our judges and our politicians, but Guam is governed by the rule of law. And as I keep pointing out, we're part of the most prosperous and the best empire the world has ever known. I think we should make the best of our position in that empire, not try this. I think it was another talk radio host said, well, we ought to roll the dice, see what happens.
Yeah, and I believe that the most important thing we have is found in the Constitution, the 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments. And if we think that we have problems now with government corruption, can we just imagine Guam with the constitutional protections stripped away, with the federal laws against public corruption stripped away, and what kind of constraint that would tear away from our public officials being able to pretty much do whatever they want to do. These would be the good old days in my view.
True enough, Carl. Well, thank you very much for calling in, and I'll be looking for your call tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Bob.
So long. So here we are at the end of another perfect day here on Tall Tales, another exciting, informative informative, educational episode of the top-rated afternoon talk show on FM radio in the Western Pacific. So glad you joined me, and let's do it again tomorrow, okay? I'll see you then. So long.
More troops prepare to join the fight. I'm Richard Jordan, Fox News. Kurdish forces in northern Syria say they have reportedly struck a deal with the Syrian government to send troops to help defend against the